Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special episode of College Football UK planned about 3 hours before recording. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee has just announced the playoffs for 2025, and you're going to get our pretty much immediate reactions. Joining me to do so is Nick and Sam. I'm not going to ask how you are. We know how Nick is right now. Sam, he's obviously
I'm
also
happy.
we're all
I'm sailing on cloud nine, honest.
we're all a little bit. But what we're gonna do, we'll go through three stages, and then obviously, well, we'll just see where the chips fall. So if we start with the top four, Indiana comes in at number one, Ohio State comes in at number two, Georgia comes in at number three, Texas Tech comes in at number four. Is there anything within this? Obviously, we'll get into it on Wednesday. Indiana just beat Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. Georgia just won the SEC. Does this sound? And Texas Tech won the Big 12. Does this sound about right to you guys? This top four?
Yeah, top four. When we did the UK polls, this was the top four I put. I think it makes the most sense. I do think that we need that a lot of what needs to go into this, and I suppose how they decided and what we've sort of heard is that the championship games, apart from the odd game, shouldn't matter because at the end of the day, you're only getting a select number of teams that can actually make it to those things, and actually it impacts the others when they can't. They don't even have a chance to play in a game. So I do think that I don't think you could have put Ohio below Georgia, and I don't think you could have had anyone else in those positions. In my opinion, the only thing that changed is essentially who was the undefeated team and who had lost the game, and that was between the top two in
Yeah.
Indiana and Ohio State. So, and also I'm glad that Ohio State lost. So.
I mean, we all are. The world is. The world is healing when Ohio State loses. Nick, sounds about right to you though. When we kind of watched the selections come
Yeah,
through together.
yeah. Ohio for much as I know they're not popular on this show. For much as Ohio, to be fair, they have led from start to finish. If you're gonna throw an argument for Alabama to be in to say that championship weekend, a defeat in championship weekend shouldn't affect your rankings, then really, again, you could probably argue that with Ohio. The difference there is they were both, one team has now gone unbeaten for the whole year. I've got no issue with the top four. It kind of wrote itself. So yeah, I think there wasn't really much option as to what you could have done there.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that the when they were sort of referring back to the old format of college football of the four teams. I think this year probably would have been the easiest four-team playoff to have picked itself that they'd have ever had.
Yeah. Um, Look, obviously gonna just add here. I completely agree. This is the top four that that really this is how the chip should have fallen. I did say to Nick as it was coming through, I was a little bit. I wasn't surprised per se. I just thought I didn't know how they were going to put Georgia and Ohio State. I didn't know if they'd just put Georgia at number two, Ohio State at number three. I would have been well. Personal things aside, it's right the way it came through. Would have loved to have seen Ohio State drop a little bit more personally, but that's not a foot. Well, it is kind of a football thing. But that top four, absolutely right. That's exactly how it should have been. And then you go into the next four. So 5 to 8, these are the teams that get a home playoff berth in the first round. Games will be on their campuses. In at number 5 was Oregon, number 6 Ole Miss, number 7 Texas A&M, number 8 Oklahoma. Now I've got a particular question that I want us to start with, and that's Ole Miss at number 6. They've lost Lane Kiffin. They've lost a few members of staff. Some have returned. I think it's the OC has come back to coach the playoffs. Lane Kiffin obviously is now at LSU. Glad to see that the playoff committee hasn't punished Ole Miss for losing Lane Kiffin and members of staff and things like that. And it's good to see them still right up there because those players have earned it.
I think that's the important part. Is it's not necessary. It's not. It shouldn't always be about the coaches. It's not fair to punish the players based on a head coach deciding that he wants to go and switch allegiances to another team and take his coaches with, and all the off-field stuff that's been going on with Lane Kiffin and being told that he can't go in the play, he can't coach the team in the playoffs, etc. I don't think it's fair on the kids that have been working hard all year to get them in that position to then be punished for the issues that are going on off field. So I think with all of these four teams, in my opinion, not playing, I don't think there should have been any changes. Obviously, we'll then come on to the next four to kind of go through that bit. But to me, all four of those teams didn't play. So to me, they shouldn't have moved. And I think they deserve the spots that they were in.
Absolutely. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I mean that second stage, I think. I mean, I have 2 weeks ago. I thought it was quite when after rivalry week. So that was not
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, 1 week ago. Sorry. Um, I thought maybe dropping Texas A&M as low as they did regarding when they lost to Texas. I'd have maybe kept them one place higher over Ole Miss. And in the same context, if that had been
Yeah.
their last game and they had no championship game to play, then that would have been how they finished. So I maybe a couple of weeks. I mean, I can't even remember whether even before rivalry week I might have had Texas A&M over Ole Miss anyway. But the only argument there would be I think I had last week A&M over Ole Miss anyway. I went and checked back. I checked back because I wasn't sure, and I did. So,
Yeah.
other than switching those two, that is exactly how that second tier should be. Um, and again, it's an argument. Some people might say, well, A&M should be above Ole Miss. Some people will say Ole Miss should be above A&M. I think it's one of those sort of tit for tat. I don't think, in the grandest scheme of things, it's that big a deal. It's just which side of the draw you're going to be on. So,
Yeah.
but you're both in. You're both clearly in that second tier. No issues.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I would have said this. I would have preferred to have Ole Miss at number one. I would have preferred to have, sorry, Ole Miss and Oregon flipped. I'm happy with Texas A&M being where they are. Texas A&M has that disgusting loss to the unranked, unplayoff team in Texas. Um, but no, I think out of the three, Oregon's only loss was granted at home to now number one overall Indiana. Ole Miss's only loss is to number three overall Georgia, and that was on the road. So I think out of the two, on the road to Georgia and at home to Indiana, you're splitting hairs, given especially where they're ranked. But I still think that loss for Oregon is slightly worse. No offense to them, and they looked less impressive throughout games. Some of those games have been much closer to slugfests. You even look at how much of a graft they had to put in to just get past Penn State, who ended up being head coachless not very long after that. Um, and some of the games have obviously been quality wins, but a slugfest against Iowa, a slugfest against Penn State, a slugfest that they lost against Indiana at home. I just think Ole Miss's resume is slightly better. But then you account for the head coach loss, and there has to be something accounted for there. And then obviously you've got Oklahoma, who also have just a shambolic loss to that unranked Texas team. I don't know about unranked, but well, they would have still been ranked, but you know what I mean. And I'm just winding you up there, Sam. I'm glad you didn't take the bait. So that top four, that first four, the four home games are absolutely fine. I think it could be slightly different, but you're splitting hairs, and overall, not too many complaints there. Okay.
Yeah, I think for me it would have been the only difference. Obviously, you mentioned about Ole Miss and um, Texas A&M being the other way. If they'd have done that on like last week and ranked Texas A&M above Ole Miss, I would have kept it exactly the same as well. For me, I just don't think you can change those 4, 5 to 8 in any position once you've set
Yeah.
them. For me,
Yeah, and again, it's important to remember none of those teams were in championship games. None of those teams played this weekend. None of those teams had much to do with anything. So, like I say, you can't really do much with them. Moving on, though, to the 4 teams that get a road playoff game. In at number 9, and this is where the committee, this is obviously where it starts to get some of the controversy really starts to come in. This is where some of the arguments come in. This is where some of it is, we're going to say debatable. I'm sure someone here will have an argument for the way this has fallen. The playoff committee was up until 2:30, meeting until 2:30 in the morning local time, which I think is central, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, that don't really matter. They were up till 2:30 in the morning. They were in a meeting. They were debating it all. They've obviously been in today, finalizing everything. This has been a contentious. Now, the conversation was between Alabama, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Miami. It has fallen. Number 9 is Alabama. Number 10 is Miami. Number 11 and 12, because if you will notice by now, there aren't 5 conference champions for. So the next 2 higher ranked conference champions, and they are Tulane and James Madison. Now, there are a couple of particular talking points within this one. We'll go with the first one. I'm just going to stand back, let Nick do his thing. Alabama in.
Give me a minute. Keep going. Give me a minute.
Alabama in. Miami in. Notre Dame out and not in the playoffs. Sam, while we wait for Nick to be ready, I'm going to ask you, week 1, Miami edges it over Notre Dame. Arguably, Notre Dame have been one of the best teams in all of college football for the last 10 weeks, and those 2 really close, high-ranked losses have cost them in the head-to-head with Miami.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure Nick will obviously be able to explain it better, but I think probably the big thing for me is that, and obviously this is why I was saying about mentioning about the others shouldn't have been and shouldn't have moved. We obviously mentioned that, Oklahoma all the way, well, Oregon to Oklahoma, they couldn't do anything to move from where they were from their last ranking. And I think this should have been the same for Miami and Notre Dame, because at the end of the day, neither of them could do anything about their positioning in the last couple of weeks where Notre Dame have been above Miami, right? So then what they decide to do at the very last minute is switch them. Like, it, to me, it screams like, and this is where I disagree with them. Me and Nick, and we've always said for a while the way in which they rank teams is dubious at best anyway. But to decide that everyone else stays exactly the same, apart from obviously the switch with Oklahoma and with Ohio State and Indiana, which granted, right decision in my opinion. All the others should have stayed exactly the way that they did, because they put them in that ranking for a reason for the last week or so. So what has changed is, if the only thing that has changed is the fact that they decided that opening game where Miami beat Notre Dame is the only thing, because when you look at the all the other stats, majority of them has Notre Dame over Miami. The only difference is that, what was it, 1, 2, 3 point loss. So to me, 3 point loss. So that's the bit that I disagree with, is if you were going to go into this week knowing that the only thing that's going to really change is who's basically going to be the championship holders for each of the conferences, how can you then justify swapping Miami with Notre Dame? That's my only issue with it, because you haven't done it with anyone else. The fact Alabama lost by 21 points in that championship final to Georgia, to then not have them move at all, just doesn't seem right. So it's like they've awarded someone, like, fair enough, it was a 3 point loss. You can't really say it was a 21 point. That's a 3 score loss. It's not like, other teams have been punished for more in terms of the ranking. So for me,
Yeah.
I'd make an argument to say that maybe Alabama should be there, but at the end of the day, they just got, we're talking about teams that are going to be playing each other here, and Alabama just proved they can't even compete with Georgia. So why does that mean that the likes of either Miami or Notre Dame should suffer when they have the exact same record, but now obviously they've lost in a championship match very convincingly. So I
Yeah.
don't agree with that. I mean, I personally I wouldn't have put Alabama in that. I can understand why they have, but I wouldn't have, and I would have Miami and Notre Dame in there. But if you're going to go with what they've done, it baffles me how you can go from having Notre Dame Miami to now Miami Notre Dame.
Yeah. Nick, are you ready?
Yeah.
Let me. Right, okay. So I'm going to add to this one, and I think it might set up what you're about to say here. In week 11, when they first released the rankings and the number one, Notre Dame 10, Miami 18. Week 12, Notre Dame 9, Miami 15. Week 13, Notre Dame 9, Miami 13. Week 14, Notre Dame 9, Miami 12. Week 15, Notre Dame 10, Miami 12. At one point, Notre Dame, to start off, were 8 places ahead of Miami. In that time, Notre Dame have not lost, and I do believe Miami have lost. Wait, that was 14, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. So, and Miami had just come off the second loss of the season. That, as you have said, makes no sense whatsoever. When they've not played this weekend, nothing has changed between the two teams, and they were 10 and 12 last week. So, Nick, the stage is yours.
Right. Okay. So when Notre Dame played Miami in week 1, yes, they lost, and they lost by 3 points. They lost to a walk-off field goal. If you go back and you watch that game, Notre Dame don't have a identity. It's a brand new freshman quarterback. They've had so many new players. They've got injuries, and I get that injuries are a part of football. New squads or rosters are a part of football. I get it, but Miami had quite a lot of returning players. They had a new QB, true, but he wasn't a freshman, certainly. And Notre Dame went all the way with Miami and lost on a field goal. Now, you look at Notre Dame 12 weeks later, they are a well oiled machine. They smashed whoever 70 points. And before someone brings up strength of schedule, I get it, but you can only play who's in front of you. They lost to Texas A&M by a point. Again, week 2, they're still trying to find their identity. And since then, they have gone on a run that has been, as far as I can see, has been matched only by 2 teams. And they are the 2 teams at the top of the college playoff in Indiana and Ohio State. And I just believe that at some point, and yes, Miami beat Notre Dame. I get that. But that is week 1. We are not picking the college football playoff based on week 1. We are basing it on an entire season. And at some point, that head-to-head win has to be reduced in strength just by what is being shown. I'll come to this in a minute. Right, okay, so the second thing I want to say is, are we saying that the conference championship games don't count? Should you look, let's take BYU for example. BYU, if they'd won, would have been in the college football playoff. if they lost, they wouldn't be. Well, to be fair, they were ranked 11, and so if they didn't have their championship place, that's fine. But Alabama have been penalised and dropped because they lost their championship game. Not everybody plays a championship game. So at what point do you say that is the end of the season? Everybody has played. That is the record we are going to go on. I don't think what happens in a championship game when you're only a select few teams playing should go towards the season record of the playoff. And really, let's be fair, what happened last week, the playoff rankings last week should have been the playoff rankings that should have been the playoff because not everybody has played this week. And certainly when two teams don't play, how you can switch them, I'm not sure. But they want to take the championship games as they're taking that into account. Okay, right. Well, Miami played 13 games and lost 3. That's a win percentage of 76.9%. Notre Dame played 12 games and won 10. That's an 83.3% win percentage. So I'm just check my maths. 83 is higher than 70. Yep, I'm right there. Okay. Notre Dame total loss points 4. They lost 2 games by a total of 4 points. Miami lost 2 games by a total of 9 points. Just check my maths, Sam. 4 is lower than 9, correct?
I believe so.
Yes, right. The opponent rankings when Notre Dame lost, they lost to Miami, who were ranked preseason at number 10, and they lost to Texas A&M, who at the time were ranked 19 but were 1-0. Miami's lost opponent rankings were in week 7. They lost to Louisville, who were unranked, and then in week, was it 11, I think?
And that was at
10?
home. But by the way, that was at home that they lost to Louisville as well. And looked, I watched that entire game, and they were terrible. They were very lucky to, I believe, very lucky to even got back into that game.
They lost to SMU, and SMU were also unranked. So to me, losing to 2 ranked teams is not as bad as losing to 2 unranked teams. But again, I might be barking up the wrong tree. Notre Dame's power ranking is at 33. Miami's power ranking is 40. Notre Dame's AP ranking is 9. Miami's AP ranking is 12. And as of last week, at the end of the season, Notre Dame's CFP ranking was 10 and Miami's was 12. BYU with a team in between at 11. Notre Dame scored a total of 504 points this season. Miami only scored 416. So nearly 100 points in a season more than Miami. This is where Miami did, in all the facts that I found, this is the only one that I found that Miami did better. Notre Dame conceded 211 points. Miami only conceded 166. That is the only stat I've found where Miami beat Notre Dame. But if you take their points conceded away from the difference in points scored, Notre Dame still have a positive number. So I fully agree with Sam. I don't understand how anything from last week has changed, other than they are penalising teams who've played in a championship when they shouldn't. And because of that, it's changed, and BYU have been penalised, which has taken them out of they were the buffer, if you like, or they were the team in between. And because Miami were next to Notre Dame, suddenly their head-to-head result has more strength. But
Yeah.
I don't think BYU should have been penalised for losing. I don't think Alabama should have been penalised for losing. But that's what we're doing. You know, if we're saying championship games count, then why aren't Duke allowed to play in the playoff? They've just won their championship. But the college football playoff don't want Duke in there because Duke are shit. Fair
Well,
enough. But you can't change the rules for one team and not change the rules for the other.
well, one thing I think is important, and actually a good friend of the show, who's previously been on in the summer, Oliver Hodgkinson tweeted out before, which is very true. Oh, for the last 5 weeks, the changes the committee has constantly said about what a conference championship means and what it doesn't, and what winning it means and what losing in it does, and what not being in one means and what not being in one doesn't mean, and all these different things have kept changing. And the mental gymnastics is going to be strong today. Now, the one thing has remained consistent is obviously the rule, and that's the top 5 ranked conference champions. And now Duke were never, to my knowledge, never even close to being ranked anyway.
No.
So look, I as far as the Duke thing goes, I know that Duke wanted and tried to do it, but I don't think anyone ever really realistically thought that if Duke won it, that they were going to be in the CFP. Now, I want to see Paul Feinbaum at the moment because, as I've always been such a lover of his, he kicked off about not having one G5 team in the playoffs. Now there's 2, which for those of us and Nick, nobody, and I'm going to say nobody, I think, pounded the drum on this podcast more than you for having Navy, for North Texas, for US, and those, particularly in the American Conference, those G5 teams to be given a fair shout and a fair look in and being appropriately looked at because
Being
the
ranked
records,
when they deserve to
they
be
won the
ranked.
games. And as you've always said, though, like they can't help who they're playing. They're playing who they're playing, but they're winning
Yeah.
the goddamn games, and they should be being looked at. And I will listen. We'll obviously give you the credit where it's due. You pounded that drum for anyone, and now two G5 teams are in the playoffs. And I think I'm not gonna say that you specifically made that happen, but I know that your support for the G5 has absolutely done that and been part of that. It's for me. I'm really worried that if James Madison and Tulane do get bounced, that people will be getting on the soapboxes of, oh, look, we told you about the G5 teams, blah, blah, blah. But with Alabama making it in and making it in at number 9, I'd love to see Paul Feinbaum and whether he's gonna just be happy that an extra SEC team's made it in, or be really upset that 2 G5 teams are in. And I'd love to be a fly in wherever he is at the moment. I think, but just to kind of move on a little bit though onto these are the things that have always been said, and but what the problem is what the conference championships mean. So the 5 top 5 ranked teams, the conference champions, has always been a thing. Well, has been a thing now. The only thing that's changed is what does that mean, and I think it's an incredibly fair point. None of us had an argument with Indiana hopping Ohio State, but Ohio State only just going behind them to just flipping the position. No one had a problem with that. Would you have had a problem with? And let me just double check if Alabama won the SEC, would you have had a problem with Georgia being put down to number 9 and Alabama being put up to number 3?
No, because
What would you drop?
I would have put Alabama to 3. I'd have dropped Georgia to 4, and everyone would have dropped one.
Right. So, and I'm playing devil's advocate here for a second. So Alabama jumps up to 3, Georgia drops to 4, Texas Tech, they're number 4. They win their conference championship and then drop a place.
Yeah, and that's the point. You can't really, at this point, if you're saying that the 4 teams, the 4 championship team, or get their, because this is where the playoff is a little bit. They've got all these rankings, and they say this is the ranking, and we're going to let these set teams in, but these set teams may not be in the top 12 ranking. For example, JMU, Tulane. And this is the problem. I kind of think the college football ranking should have finished last week. And then you have almost like you have a new ranking, which is position 1. I don't know, let's call it the SEC champion. Position 2, Big Ten champion, position 3 Big 12 champion, position 4 American champion, position 5 JMU champion, and then your three teams, the rest of the qualifiers, the other eight seven at large teams. Now, if you structured it that way, you're not saying that those teams are better than the ones below. What you're saying is these teams take the top 5 positions because they are the champions. It is not you can argue about which is the best conference and what have you. I'm not here for that argument. But you really, at that point, it's structured, and this goes back to the whole point about conference games counting towards rankings. They shouldn't do. It should have finished last week. They are your rankings. These are your champions. They take positions 1 to 5. These are your at-large teams. They take positions 6 through 12.
Yeah, I agree. I think the position should be relatively fit. Should be essentially fixed, right? And I actually think to an extent,
And
I'm
just
sure
don't
this
get
is
again. I don't want to. I'm not saying that by putting at number 5 the Sunbelt champion. I am not saying that the Sunbelt champion is better than any team any at-large team. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's how they should visually structure it as of last week. They should
yeah. Well,
structure the
Yeah, so
visuals
you should have
differently.
it where you basically have the first 5 places in the college playoff go to the 5 highest ranked championship
Champions.
winners.
Yeah.
Because obviously then
So
you're not debating whether it, because obviously Duke would then make the argument that they should be in because of whatever. So it just says the first 5 places, 1 to 5, are structured that it is the 5 highest ranked championship winners, and then after that should just be from 6 to 12, whoever's ranked in 6 to 12. That's it.
which is how it technically was last year.
Yeah.
Technically. But what I'd actually even say is like last week's rankings, and it takes away this show, right? And again, this takes away a lot of fanfare because this is a penultimate. This is what everyone's tuning into. This is what everyone cares about. Blah blah blah. It takes away this program right here, right? But what you should have is the week 15 playoff rankings. They are set. The rankings do not change.
Mm.
All that changes, like no one moves up, no one moves down. End of. But the championship games, all they do is decide who guarantees a spot. And then you have the rankings as they were last week. And then that means that, well, let me just go down here real quick. It means Indiana, but yes, the rank's number 2, they will stay ranked number 2. No matter what, they beat Ohio State at number 1, but they stay ranked number 2. Because we're going to say that conference championships don't matter except from buying a couple of teams the ticket. But Indiana, they have to be in guaranteed. Next up, Georgia. Okay, guaranteed. Try that again. Clicked on the wrong week. Georgia and Indiana are in 2 and 3. They're cemented. Nothing can happen. Obviously, Ohio State are going to be in, right? Texas Tech, they're in. So 2, 3, and 4, no matter what, their position sealed. 1 stays the same. 5 stays the same. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 stay the same. The only difference is if BYU beat Texas Tech, BYU are guaranteed a place. They don't move from 11. They're still all the way down there in the rankings, but they're guaranteed a place. And then all you have on the weekend is you as a Notre Dame team, because this is where I think it's annoying. And I was chatting to a Notre Dame fan yesterday and kind of bantering off with him. Every game went your way. Every game you needed to go your way went your way. For crying out loud, Notre Dame changed their profile picture on social media to a golden Georgia logo, to a golden Texas Tech logo. Texas Tech win. They beat BYU. That's what you needed to happen. Georgia beat Alabama. You needed that to happen. Every game that should have happened, that should have gone to, if we're counting somewhat that conference championships mean something, every game went Notre Dame's way. And you have still missed out to a team that did exactly what Notre Dame did this weekend. Sat on their couches, TV on, watch the games. And that's it. And it's like, I am completely and utterly with you that this is ridiculous how that flip has happened where nothing has happened and where we need to stop changing what these conference championships mean if the SEC championship means something different to the Big Ten championship and means something different to the ACC. It doesn't make any sense. And I think I'm with you, and I think I'm trying to run. And my response would be, all that the championships do is buy a ticket. You get a ticket bought for you. Everyone else gets the invited ticket, the spare, and you go down that list.
I mean,
Yeah.
you go on about how I bang the drum for the G5. Let's remember, Navy at this point have played one game less than everybody else because they play their own championship game, if you like, against Army. Is it next week or is it the week after? Yeah, next week. So Navy haven't played as many games as Tulane and North Texas in their own conference. Now, if they won that game, if that game had been pre-playoffs and Navy had won that game, Navy would have been in the championship game ahead of Tulane, I think. So it would have been Navy versus North Texas for a spot. But Navy don't get that option because they play Army after the playoffs been announced. So that's a little harsh on Navy. But no one's banging that drum. No one's screaming, well, Navy are a bit hard done by because they got one. They didn't get to play an extra game like everyone else. No one cares because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
At some point,
if you're not, I think if you're not going to have that, if you're going to have that Army game 2 weeks after the championship, well, the playoffs are decided, then Navy should have another game in the season somewhere, because that means essentially you're saying that the Navy Army match doesn't really mean anything other than to the people who were involved within that game, i.e., Navy and Army. But I agree. I think that the playoffs needs. And again, like we said, this was the same issue that we had last year where they were changing things up and then they've changed it again. We're probably going to see another change next year. I mean, obviously, there's been stuff going around about whether they'd have a 16-team playoff, whether they'd have a 24-team playoff. And it's like, at what point do we just turn around and can we stick with the same thing for once?
Sam, I said this exactly to Fletch just before we came on air. If you have a 16-team playoff, for example, all you're doing is moving this issue that we have now to spots 17 and 18.
Oh, yeah.
Because then team whoever that finishes 17 on the same ranking as team 16, the argument doesn't change. You're just moving it down the line. Now, maybe you move it so far down the line no one gives a shit. Maybe. I don't know. But I don't know who finished 17 and 18 this year. Who was ranked 17 and 18 this year? Well, sorry, I haven't got it in front of me.
I'm yet to see the full top 25, but if we go off, because I don't think I can't remember if they do or don't release a full top 25. They've only shown the top essentially 14 with the first and second teams out.
So it would have been
Michigan
finished 18. Michigan finished 18. Tulane finished 17, but Tulane would have already been in anyway, so that would affect USC. So it would be USC and Michigan who are then arguing. And
that's the is that the AP one?
Yeah, that's the. Sorry, I'm looking at the AP one.
If we're looking at the playoffs, it's 17 and 18 last week with Virginia and Arizona.
Right, so same principle. You move it now. Virginia could have got in anyway if they'd won this week, so that would have been irrelevant.
But they lost.
Yeah, but if they'd lost, they could have still at least, they'd have still at least had an argument because they were 7. And that's my whole point. You move the argument down to 17 and 18. You're having the same argument. You're just moving it further down the line. So it's the way you do it that's the problem, not how many teams.
Okay, so I do want to wrap this up. The NFL started about 25 minutes ago. Listen, my team's on a bye week this week. I don't give two craps.
So am I.
But I believe that some of you, well, may want to start getting at least
Wow.
going in and watching some of it. So to
Dol-
finish off,
Dolphins are two touchdowns up already.
jeez. But
Devon
to finish
Achan,
off,
Devon Achan has got one touchdown, and Jalen Waddle's got a touchdown. Flying.
to finish off though, and wrap it up, I'm just going to quickly show what the bracket looks like. Now, again, as you should all be aware right now, 1, 2, 3, and 4 home play get a bye week. 5, 6, 7, and 8 all get a home playoff game, and 9, 10, 11, 12 all get a road playoff game. Just quickly, JMU will be playing Oregon at Oregon in the first round, the winner of which will play Texas Tech. Alabama will play Oklahoma on the road, winner of which will play Indiana. That is one half of the bracket. Tulane will play Ole Miss on the road, the winner of which will play Georgia. And Miami will play Texas A&M on the road, the winner of which will play Ohio State.
I hope they get fucking battered.
Absolutely. So obviously, what we're
Not
going to
bitter, are you,
do,
Nick?
if you're on YouTube, please keep having a look. If you're on audio only, head to the links in the description of this episode. You can find us on social media. We posted this here as well. So on Wednesday, we're going to review the championship games that have happened this weekend. Obviously, we've mentioned a couple of things to do with them now, but we're not going full into depth in it. We'll review the games on Wednesday. We'll be talking about signing day and all that kind of thing. And Gary will also have his opportunity to share his thoughts, and we'll have all calmed down and thought about it. Nick probably won't have, but Sam and I will have calmed down, thought it through, and all that sort of stuff. The week after is when we're going to get into the playoff talk. We'll break down the bracket. We'll give our thoughts on the first round and the playoffs going forward. So keep an eye out for that content. Thank you so much for joining us. Thought we'd do something a little bit different and trying. So thank you, Nick and Sam, for making yourselves available at short
No
notice.
worries.
No worries.
And doing this with me. So we will see you all on Wednesday.